Well, the topic for today is anatomy of the conjunctiva. See, so anatomy means it will include about the structure as well as the histology of what contains within the conjunctiva. As you already know, conjunctiva is a transparent mucous membrane. That's very important to remember. It is a transparent as well as it is a mucous membrane. Now this lines the anterior aspect of the eyeball, which you are definitely sure about. An extra information would be that it is also covering the posterior aspect of the eyelid. So if you have the eyelid coming down like this, and if you have the eye globe this way, you should know that conjunctiva is a structure that starts from the limbus, goes all the way at the fornix, it folds up and goes at the posterior aspect of the lid, ending at the opening of Meibomian gland, which we have already discussed. And please don't forget, you have a lower lid as well, so it is also covering the posterior aspect of the lid as well. What does the word conjunctiva mean? It's a Latin version of the word conjoin, which means to join. That means it joins up the eyeball to the eyelid. Now these are the parts of the conjunctiva. That means it is divided into a palpebral area, the bulbar conjunctiva is the part that is covering up the eyeball. Palpebral conjunctiva is part of the conjunctiva which lines the eyelid. In between, at the folding where the lid part and the eyeball part joins, at the junction there is a fold which is called as the conjunctival fornix. Now further on in the palpebral conjunctiva, it is further divided into marginal, tarsal and an orbital part, whereas the bulbar area is divided into a scleral part and a limbal part. So yet again, we should know that the conjunctiva gets divided into an area that is covering up the lid, that is the palpebral. The part that is covering up the eyeball or up to the limbus is the bulbar part, and at this junction between the palpebral and the bulbar we get the fornix. So depicting it once again, we know that this is where the conjunctiva starts from, that is the limbus part. So this is the limbal conjunctiva. Then this is the area that is covering the sclera of the eyeball. So this is the scleral part of the bulbar conjunctiva, and this is the area that is called as the palpebral conjunctiva, and here it is having a marginal Now this is the area covering the tarsal gland. So this is the tarsal part of the palpebral conjunctiva, and this is the area that is closer to the orbit. So that forms the part of orbital conjunctiva. This is tarsal and this is marginal. Now, as I said, this is the area that is the fornix. It is forming a fold, and it is the junction between the bulbar as well as the palpebral conjunctiva, which is called as the fornixal conjunctiva. So again, palpebral conjunctiva is divided into marginal, tarsal and orbital. And with regard to the marginal conjunctiva, we should know that it is the part that is extending from the lid margin, and this is very important that it ends, or it is starting, if you are thinking it from anterior, it is starting at the opening of tarsal gland or the meibomian gland, and it is extending up to sulcus subtarsalis. Now sulcus subtarsalis, it marks the inferior edge of the tarsal plate, and it is a shallow groove situated 2 millimeters from the lid margin, and it is actually the lacrimal puncta that opens in the marginal zone. So with respect to the diagram here, we should know that this is the area of subtarsalis, where the marginal part of the palpebral conjunctiva ends. So it starts at the opening of the meibomian gland. This is the meibomian gland or the tarsal gland. This opens here. So the marginal part of the palpebral conjunctiva starts at this opening and extends up to the area subtarsalis, where the gland starts. Now this is around 2 millimeters from the lid margin. Now next is about the tarsal conjunctiva. Tarsal conjunctiva, you should know that it is firmly adherent to the tarsal plate. You cannot separate it. Separating it even during surgery is a bit difficult. And the speciality of this area is that it is highly vascular. And when you look through this part of the tarsal conjunctiva, it appears that the meibomian glands can be seen as yellow streaks through this tarsal conjunctiva. With respect to the orbital conjunctiva, we should know that it is extending from the upper border of the tarsal plate, and it is extending all the way up to the fornix. So we should know where this meibomian gland is ending, and the orbital part will start from there and extend all the way up to the fornix. And these are loosely attached to the superior tarsal muscles, which is our Muller's muscle. It is located above the tarsal gland, so it is called as the superior tarsal muscle. Now this area will have shallow grooves and elevations which are called by the name stayed up plateaus or grooves. This is not very important. Now the next part is the bulbar conjunctiva. Bulbar conjunctiva, as you know, it has a scleral element and a limbal element. With regard to the scleral conjunctiva, it is thin, transparent and loosely attached And this is very important, the fact that it is loosely attached, which is very useful during cataract surgery. Mainly it is useful in the SICS, that is called as small incision cataract surgery. And it permits in the visualization of the conjunctiva and the episcleral vessels. So that is very important. Like whether it is the conjunctival vessels that is more prominent, you call it as conjunctivitis. If it is infiltrating into the episcleral vasculitis format, then we call it as episcleral or episcleritis. Now the separation of the sclera from the scleral conjunctiva is by a capsule which is called as Tenon's capsule. Now this is a very soft fibrous tissue which is again important when you do the surgery. Like we have to ensure that even the tenons is separated over the sclera, and it is on the bare sclera that the SICS is or the incision for SICS is made. Now coming to the limbal conjunctiva, you should know that limbal conjunctiva is actually a ridge. In fact, it is a thickened portion that is running around the conjunctiva, and it is the conjunctiva, then a Tenon's capsule at the conjunctiva, the Tenon's capsule and the episcleral tissue are in fact all fused together at the limbal area. So if this is the scleral part and this is, let's say, the cornea, which is a central circle, the limbus is actually a fusion of all this. Limbal conjunctiva is actually a fusion of all these three tissues. Now regarding the conjunctival fornix, we should know that it is the area that is fusing the bulbar and the palpebral conjunctiva. As you know, there is a palpebral conjunctiva, there is an area that is over the sclera, and now whatever is fusing these two together, this part is the fornicial conjunctiva. The only anatomical or clinical importance of the fornix is that it is the area where the lacrimal gland opens up, or the lacrimal ducts open into the lateral part of the superior fornix. Now the next part is you should know the extent of fornix, or it is good to know how far behind on the globe is the fornix of each side, that is the medial, lateral, superior and inferior are located. So we should know that it is actually the lateral extent that is the maximum to reach the fornix. So this is the distance between the fornix of lateral end and the limbus. So this is maximum. So it's a statement that can come for the MCQ, like the lateral fornix is the farthest from the limbus, which is true. So you should remember this. Now we should know that the superior fornix extends between 8 to 10. There is a slight variation. So you can remember roughly it to be an 10. That is the second farthest from the limbus. And closely behind is the inferior fornix as well. So in order, if you ask me, it is first the lateral, that is the farthest, then superior, then inferior, and this is again a question which is the shortest fornix away, that is away from the limbus, which is the medial. Now coming into the histology of conjunctiva, we should know that the layers of conjunctiva are formed by the epithelium, the substantia propria. And the substantia propria is further divided into adenoid layer and fibrous layer. Very important from the MCQ perspective. There are two layers of epithelium, as you can see, the columnar and the cuboidal type, and under that you have the substantia propria, and this is having not much of cells present. It is mainly an adenoid formal, but inner part is having fibrous tissues. Now coming further on to the number of layers in each segment, let's start with marginal. Marginal, as you can see, is having a 5 layers of non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. The superficial is the squamous cells, then you have polyhedral and cylindrical cells. It's not very important from a MS ophthalmology perspective. It will be important if you guys were in the DNB training program. Then the next layer is the tarsal and orbit. It is having the 2 layers of stratified cuboidal epithelium. Superficial and deeper layers are formed by cylindrical cells as well as cuboidal cells. Now the next is the fornix, the sclera. They are formed by 3 layers of stratified squamous epithelium. The superficial middle layer are formed in order by the cylindrical, polyhedral and cuboidal cells. And finally the limbus, this has 10 layers of stratified squamous epithelium, that makes it the thickest of all, and it is superficial squamous, middle layer is polygonal and basal is cubical or cuboidal. Now within the epithelium there are certain cells that you should be aware of. That is the goblet, cells, the melanocytes, which are most important. Goblet cells are responsible for the mucin layer, which is, as you remember, a layer of the tear film, and melanocytes are responsible for nevi, which you see on the conjunctiva. It's called as the conjunctival nevi, which patients will come to you stating, sir, there is a brown patch which is present on the conjunctiva, and which is usually nevi. There is also conjunctival epithelial melanocytes, which is called as CEM, which are all important with respect to the melanocytes. And few other cells you should know of is Langerhans cells, Karl cells and Maltz cells, which is not that significant from a clinical perspective. Few about the adenoid layer. Okay, now coming to the adenoid layer, we should know that it is also called as the lymphoid layer, and it consists of fine connective tissue reticula, in the meshwork of which lies the lymphocytes. And we should know that it is not present at birth, and it is developing 2 to 3 months after birth. Now whereas the fibrous layers, they have both collagen as well as the elastic fibers. They are thicker than the adenoid layer except at the area of tarsal conjunctiva. So if it is at the tarsal area, the adenoid is larger. The adenoid is bigger than the fibrous layer. In all the other areas, it is the fibrous layer that is bigger than the or thicker than the adenoid layer. And more importantly, you should know that it is the fibrous layer which lodges the conjunctival vessels and nerves. So to get a quick revision of this, we should know that this is the cross section of conjunctiva, and we are discussing actually the substantia propria and the adenoid layer and fibrous layer. Now adenoid layer has lots of lymphocytes and the fibrous layers have collagen and elastic fibers. So it is in the adenoid layer that we find lymphocytes, and in the fibrous layers we have conjunctival vessels running and the nerves running. Now that's about substantia layer. Epithelial layer has already been discussed. Now we'll come to the conjunctival glands. Now the glands that you see in the conjunctiva are mainly mucin glands and the accessory lacrimal glands. Accessory lacrimal gland means apart from the lacrimal gland, which you know is situated in the superotemporal part, which drains into the fornix of the superotemporal area. Apart from that, which gives, lacrimal gland you know is the one that gives away the aqueous layer. So there are also other glands like the gland of Cross, gland of Wolfring, which also releases aqueous layer of the tear film. And more importantly, with regard to conjunctiva, you should know that it has mucin glands, and this is the most important mucin gland, that is the goblet cells. There are also Henle's glands and gland of Mans, which is located in the conjunctiva. The existence of rudimentary accessory lacrimal gland is not important. Coming to goblet cells, it's important to know that these are unicellular goblet cells, single celled, and they are not present in the terminal ends. That is, if let's say this is the palpebral part of conjunctiva and this is the bulbar part of conjunctiva and this we know is the fornix. So we should know that this goblet cells are not present at the marginal, neither is it present at the limbal ends. The goblet cells are not present. And another important thing about this unicellular cell is, once it releases the aqueous out, or the mucin in out of the goblet cells, it destroys on its own. It cannot regenerate. Now the role of releasing the next mucin is performed by the next goblet cells. Now with regard, this is very important diagram, you should know the goblet cell density. It is more in the nasal side. As you can see, there are a lot of nasal goblet cells in the nasal part and minimal in the temporal area. And with regard to the age, in children and teens, it is highest, and as you get old, this will be decreasing. Now the less important glands are the Henle's gland. It is not a true gland. It has tubular structure, and another interesting thing to know about it is present in the folds of mucous membrane and present in the palpebral conjunctiva between the tarsal plate and the fornix, and they resemble glands in the large intestine that are present in the crypts of Leber Kuhn. Little more about the glands of Mans is that they are located in the scleral conjunctiva. So the Henle's gland is present in the palpebral conjunctiva, that is in front, and the Mans is present on the scleral conjunctiva, on the globe, and it is more arranged in a ring like fashion around the cornea. Now, the location of mucin glands are important to know. We should know that at one terminal end towards the marginal end is the glands of Henle, that is in the palpebral conjunctiva, as we already discussed. Gland of Mans is located at the limbal end of the bulbar conjunctiva. But most importantly, we should know the locations of Cross and Wolfring, which we can discuss in the coming diagram. And don't forget, we also have a lower lid, and the locations should be labeled of the Henle's gland and the Mans gland. Well, why do we have mucin? What are the main functions of having a mucin layer for the tear film? So it is forming a hydrophilic layer, which is the main role of which is the distribution or equal distribution of the tear film. That means if you have the mucin layer here, the tear film's distribution, even if it is here or here, it is the role of mucin to make sure that it is uniformly distributed all around the cornea and the conjunctiva. And another main role is it ensures that it sticks on well onto the ocular surface. So it has a sticking role or a stability. It ensures the stability of the tear film. And since it is helping the aqueous layer to stick on, it is ensuring the lubrication and thereby protecting the cells of cornea and conjunctiva. Now is the most important two glands, that is the glands of Cross, which we have already seen as the accessory lacrimal gland, which means they produce the aqueous layer of the tear film. And we should know that they are in huge number in the upper fornix, that is around 42 are there in the upper fornix and just few in the lower fornix. And the upper fornix, they lie between the palpebral part of the lacrimal gland and the tarsal plate, that is somewhere a little in front of the fornix of the conjunctiva. So their location in the palpebral conjunctiva is more important to know. Next is the glands of Wolfring. As you can see, they are larger than the glands of Cross, and also you should know that they are situated in the upper border of the tarsal gland, or just midway between the end of the tarsal glands. We will specify it more in the diagram. And their numbers compared to Cross is less, that is just 2 to 5. So they are larger in size than the Cross, but their number is less. So this is the location of the Cross and the Wolfring, that is, this is Cross glands and they are around 42 in number in the upper lid, whereas Wolfring is just 2 to 5. So if you are confused with regard to the name, I remember it as the cross which we see on churches, and we know that all churches are usually located at the top of the hill, which is easy to So as I was saying, to remember the name cross, just remember it as cross at the fornix, and we know that churches are usually located at the top of the hills. So it is easy to remember that it is the cross gland, which is an accessory lacrimal gland that is located at the fornicial part. And this in the form of a wolf, you can remember like they are the ones that climb the hill. So that will be an easy way to remember the names of the glands. Now next is the blood supply, the lymphatics and innervations of the conjunctiva. With regard to the blood supply, you should know that there is a marginal tarsal arcade and a peripheral tarsal arcade, and a few contribution is also received from the anterior ciliary arteries. So we'll just look into the detail of these arterial supply. So to begin with, you should know that there is a palpebral artery. Since we are discussing things in the lid, we know palpebral is a common terminology. So we should know that there is a medial palpebral artery and there is a lateral palpebral artery. Their sources are different. The lateral palpebral artery is coming from the lacrimal artery and it divides into superior and inferior. So this is the source is from the lacrimal artery, which gives rise to the lateral palpebral artery. This is the superior and this is the inferior branch. Similarly, we have a medial palpebral artery which divides into a superior and there is another medial palpebral artery which is called as the inferior palpebral artery. Inferior medial palpebral artery. So the lateral so you should know that the lateral palpebral artery is arising from the lacrimal artery, and it is the lateral palpebral artery which divides to superior and inferior palpebral arteries. But on the medial side it is not so. Medial side, they are two branches of two different arteries, and the medial superior palpebral artery is different and the medial inferior palpebral artery is different. They are not part of a same branch like you see in the lateral part. Now after these medial, superior and inferior palpebral arteries are given, we should know that there is a marginal and this is the marginal artery, this is the marginal palpebral arcade, and this is the peripheral palpebral tarsal arcade. So this is tarsal arcade and this is peripheral and this is marginal. Both are called tarsal arcades. And this is in the upper tarsal. Similarly, you have in the inferior part also. This is the peripheral arcade, where these two branches anastomose. Similarly, the superior divisions, when they anastomose, you get peripheral and marginal arteries and margin. Now that is about the arterial supply of the conjunctiva. Now the venous drainage it's simply, you can remember that everything drains into the ophthalmic vein. There is a loop at the levator palpebrae superioris. This is levator palpebrae superioris. There is a venous loop here that drains into the ophthalmic vein, and here there is a episcleral collector channel that also drains things into the ophthalmic vein. Now the next is the lymphatic drainage. Everything in the medial end, as you can see, is draining into the submandibular lymph nodes. So the medial side of conjunctiva drains into the submandibular lymph nodes. Now things on the lateral side, that is this, is draining into the superficial parotid nodes. So laterally you have parotid nodes, and here you have submandibular. So medial for mandibular, lateral is parotid. Now ultimately all drain into the deep cervical node from the medial and the lateral. Now coming finally to the nerves, you should know that with regard to the nerve supply, this is the supraorbital, this is the infraorbital, and this is supratrochlear. So we should know that there is a supraorbital nerve, there is a supratrochlear and infratrochlear on the medial side. They are all branches of one major nerve which is called as the ophthalmic nerve. Now, to be a little more precise here, you should know that ophthalmic nerve gives rise to frontal nerve. Frontal nerve is the one that gives rise to the supratrochlear and supraorbital. Whereas infratrochlear is actually a direct branch of the ophthalmic nerve. Now, proceeding further to the other branches, we should know that there is a infraorbital nerve. Now, this is a branch of maxillary nerve, which is, as you can see, supplying the inferior part of the lid, and it is, as you can see, the infratrochlear which supplies the medial part of the lower lid, and the superior part is supplied by the supraorbital as well as contributions from supratrochlear, that is providing the sensation. Now, the extreme lateral ends is provided by the main nerve at the lateral side, that is the lacrimal nerve. Now, this lacrimal nerve is also a branch of the ophthalmic nerve, which is taken care of the lateral ends of the innervation of the lid. We also know it is the lacrimal gland, which is again situated here, so it will be easy to remember the name. So remember, if you are asked by one word, the lid's innervation is by the ophthalmic nerve and the maxillary nerve, that statement will be true, because ophthalmic nerve gives rise to frontal nerve which divides to supraorbital and supratrochlear. It has a fresh branch called as infratrochlear, that is taking care of the medial end of the lid. Now, it was also giving rise to lacrimal nerve, which is taking care of the lateral end of both the upper and the lower lid. Only the inferior portion, the inferior lid's central area, is being taken care of by the maxillary nerve. So we can say that maybe around 3/4 or maybe more than 3/4 of the lid innervation is by the ophthalmic nerve itself. There is a little contribution by the maxillary nerve through the infraorbital nerve. Coming to the clinical implications or the applied anatomy, or where are these things more important, it will be good to know the terminologies of conjunctivitis, which can be in the form of allergy, or it can be a viral conjunctivitis. There is something called as folds that form in the conjunctiva, which are called as conjunctivochalasis. There is an inflammatory nodular swelling of the conjunctiva, which is called as pinguicula, and there is a fan shaped extension of the conjunctiva onto the cornea, which is called by the name pterygium.